I was talking about this picture here, about how when information comes in through the eyes, it's actually waveform, not actually three-dimensional cars and rooms and walls. Our brains do that. And it's interesting that when information comes into the eye, it's upside down, it's backwards, and it's two-dimensional. How many people realize that? That when information comes in the eyes, it's two-dimensional. What happens is the brain then takes the two sources of information coming through the eyes. You know, like those video viewer things where you see those three-dimensional pictures when you look in. They work because each eye is given the same picture, and it puts the two together to create a three-dimensional image. Well, that's what the brain's doing every time we look around. So, consensus reality is what I was mentioning in Brixton, that it's not just us, if you like, individual minds that are creating our reality, although we're giving our unique spin on it by the nature of our beliefs and what have you that create the reality that we think we experience. But there's a collective level, consensus reality I call it, which allows us to look at the world and basically agree on what we're seeing. For instance, if I looked out of that window, the cameraman here and everything, we would agree that there was a house over there. That's consensus reality. We might then, in our uniqueness, say, oh, I like that house, I don't like that house, I don't like the color, I do like that color. We would put our spin on it, but we would agree basically there's a house there. And this level of collective reality is what the psychiatrist Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. And this is where, in so many ways, the matrix lies, this matrix of illusion that we live in and think is real. There's a phenomenon that lots of people maybe know about now, which has been termed the 100th monkey syndrome. What they found was that once you showed a certain number, and it's only a few, of a species like monkeys, something new, suddenly, inexplicably, but it's not, all or many more of that species can suddenly do spontaneously, without being shown, what the few have had to be, if you like, taught to do. And the reason that phenomena is possible is that there is a level of each species, because we're all one anyway, the human race, the monkeys, whatever, where those minds are connected. And I can only kind of symbolize it, I suppose, as if your individual mind is a computer and the collective mind is like the internet, the World Wide Web. And when you symbolically learn something new, you might type it up and put it on the web. There it becomes available to anyone that wants to log into the web. The 100th monkey syndrome works like this, in the sense that once those monkeys or anyone has learned something new, that knowledge automatically gets transferred to the collective mind, the collective level of that species. And there, like the web and logging in, other members of that species can access that. And suddenly they can do something, they know something, without actually being shown. Like most so-called mysteries and inexplicable things, it's actually very simple what's happening. Because animals don't read the newspapers and watch the television, because they don't go through this ludicrous indoctrination system we call education, they are not desensitized. They are much more sensitive to these collective levels and these other levels of consciousness. So they access information very, very sensitively, very effectively in this way. But humans do it too. And so every time we learn something new, we are adding that into the collective mind. But in terms of collective reality, that collective mind is also influencing us in the other way, in the circle. And so once you have a human collective mind, human subconscious, collective subconscious, programmed with a reality, then unless as individuals we consciously disconnect from that reality, we are going to live that reality. So this is where this whole idea comes from, that we look outside and we all agree that there are certain things there. And this is a major level of the manipulation, because the Illuminati wish to program and indoctrinate the human collective unconscious mind with a manufactured reality which will then be real to the whole population. And that, in so many ways, is what the Matrix is. So if we look at this picture, again, what is happening is once the subconscious, this is the key level of the manipulation and indoctrination. Once the subconscious, whether it's the collective subconscious or the individual subconscious, takes on a reality, through those thought forms that sense of reality creates, the conscious mind then takes that information, observes those subconscious thought fields, and turns them, in the way I talked about earlier, into three-dimensional holographic illusions that we take to be real. And therefore, if you can program subconscious reality, you can create and manipulate what the human conscious mind believes is real. And that's what the Illuminati are doing all the time. Now, in terms of miracles, what are miracles? Where people do things that are inexplicable. In a book I've just put together called Tales from the Time Loop, I give a lot of examples of these miraculous feats, like people who, in laboratory conditions, have put swords all the way into their body and out the other side, pulled it out, no problem. We, of course, see people who walk through fire. And there are those, again, documented examples of people who walked across molten volcanic lava that is only cooled enough to hold their weight. No burning of the feet, nothing. What is happening here? It's a withdrawal from consensus reality, the reality that people accept to be real at the level of the subconscious human collective mind. Because if you accept as your reality that this foot or this leg is real, and you accept that fire is real and not an illusion of the mind, then your mind will create the reality of your belief, i.e., you walk through fire, you'll get bloody burned. But if you can disconnect your sense of reality from the consensus belief that fire burns and legs get burned, you can walk through fire and walk across molten lava and put swords in your body with no ill effect, because it's not your reality. It's just a miracle version of that story I told earlier in the talk at Brixton, where the hypnotist put the guy's daughter in front of him and told him when he came out of the hypnotic state he would not be able to see his daughter, so he didn't, and he could see things the other side of his daughter. Basically, it's like a movie, and you've just said, that part's not in my movie. Well, if walking across molten lava and getting burned is not in your movie, then you can't get burned, because it's all illusion. There was a lady I came across some years ago who used to give over a room in her house for people that wanted to meditate for long, periods. And she was telling me that one day, or one time, she had this guy who went in and meditated for a long period, and she got worried about him. And eventually, she took him a cup of tea, see what was going on. And she said, I opened the door she said, I walked in, looked across, she said, and I dropped the cup because she could see half of his body, the lower half, had disappeared. Only the top half existed. Below that, nothing. Why? Because he had gone so deep into a meditative state, a state of going into another reality, that his body was starting to follow his mind into that reality. This is what it's about. So there are no limitations. The only limitations are those that we put on ourselves. And as Einstein said, reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. And what makes it persistent is this collective level and the fact that we are constantly having our sense of reality reinforced externally. This is what's real, education, media, and all this stuff. And therefore we take it on and we create the three-dimensional holographic illusion of that reality. This is what the whole basis of the conspiracy about. It's hypnotizing, literally hypnotizing the population with a certain reality. So, what is reality? Quite simply, whatever we think it is. And the idea is to more and more push and pressure people into a smaller and smaller sense of reality with the destruction and suppression of diversity. The Illuminati's worst nightmare are visionaries, or those that offer another sense of reality, because that will then give people the opportunity to see that there are other possible realities, not just the one that they're constantly conditioned to have, and therefore they can see that this is not the only possibility.